You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is author producer Chris Korman, and we're discussing his new book entitled, Oh My God, It's Harvey Korman's Son. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure to finally see you in person. We have communicated for a while, but I have not been able to see your face in a long ever. So this is nice. We got so much to talk about. This book is really what a wonderful tribute to your father, Harvey Korman, and your relationship with him along the way. Um, just tell us a little bit. Our listeners. This is it's not just a story about a father-son relationship, but it's also your journey through your difficulties. You have a learning disability, and that's addressed quite a bit throughout your book. So let's talk a little bit about that and how your father helped you overcome that and get through that.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because most people want to fixate on the terrible nature. They want to fixate on blazing saddles and high anxiety, and the book really was supposed to be a celebration of the man behind the brand, the father, the husband, because I think that is more sustainable than just talking about his career, which is fine to talk about that, but
Yes.
it's interesting that he, not realizing what he was doing, was the idea of the addressing of the speech impediment was, all right, find something that you love to do that addresses your speech impediment. He said, what is that? I said, theater, okay? Take the idea of theater. You have to learn about diction and about how to present yourself and articulate yourself within the world of theater. Okay, now take the learning disability aspect of it. You have to deal with compromise. You have to deal with people. You have to deal with the idea of retention of information, which is what a learning disability is. So if you have a hard time retaining information, how are you going to challenge that part of your brain? So I said, well, Dad, I like theater. I said, okay, there you go. So take the component of the theater aspect of it. If a director says to you, you have to be off the book in 2 weeks, so you have to memorize 200 lines by 2 weeks. Take a chunk per day, retain that information, and then by the end of the week, see how far you got. So by the end of the week, I had 100 pages in my head, and then I had another 100 pages to do. So you say, if you like what you do, then the learning is not a chore. It's a training of your muscle memory. And he was doing this the whole time, and I'm thinking, maybe he's in the wrong field. Maybe he should be the teacher and not an actor. But he said, if you have struggles in your life, and everything is a chore and everything is a struggle, apply it to something that you love. So before I knew it, I was applying those skills, Jan, and not realizing I was having fun at the same time as I was evolving and cultivating these skills. And I didn't realize until I got older, that's what he was preparing me for, is that you're an actor or you're a radio host. You're not just a radio host. You are a brand. You are an entity. And he tried to get me to understand it. When you're selling yourself as a speaker or as a fundraiser for a leg disability, you're presenting yourself as a brand. And he said, if you want to separate yourself from everybody else, his philosophy was very simple. Don't give the country what they want, give them what they can't live without. And that was his life credo to me. And so that was an invaluable skill because my retention of information now is I remember things I never thought I would remember, but because I trained my brain to retain things that mattered to me, and I'm able to retain it more than just going to school and retaining stuff that you're not going to apply to your everyday life. So he was he was a forward thinker without realizing that's what he was being. He was being an advocate, and he was being a celebrator of who I was. But he wasn't lecturing me about it. He wasn't pounding into my head. He was letting me evolve at my own pace and my own time. So I thought, which I think is important, is to let a child mature in his own time. and not trying to accelerate the maturation process because it might lessen the parent's guilt of having a child that's different. I wasn't going to be better or smarter or funnier because they wanted me to. I had to find that place in the world that I could call my own at my own time. And that's something that he instilled in me.
How wonderful, though. Your father could have, I mean, a lot of things. I mean, here he is, this very well known actor, comedian. Everybody who's ever seen anything, any Carol Burnett shows, and now we can get them all on YouTube, and, Blazing Saddles, and, so many films. He could have, because of that, taken a different direction with you. He could have been, I mean, I've heard the stories before. A father could be very disappointed, that he would want you to follow in his footsteps and be more like him and all of those things. And yet he just lovingly appreciated who you were and what your abilities were and how he could help you be better in the world and survive this world. It's a tough world. It's not an easy world, and certainly difficult for somebody who does have a learning disability. And they knew fairly early on that you had a learning disability and embraced that and tried to encourage you. So I think that's what's so beautiful about your book
Oh, thank you.
is, yes.
I appreciate you saying that.
No, very much so. It's, it is that, again, it's this wonderful relationship that you two had. And go ahead, Chris, talk more about that. I love the nicknames you called each other too. So you can let our audience know
um,
those two
he,
names.
he and Carol Burnett and my wife call me this as a term of endearment, and they call me Chrissy. And every time I saw Carol, she'd say, "Come here, Chrissy." And it's like, and very few people call me Chrissy. That was a term of endearment. And so anytime I saw Carol, it was like, "Come here, Chrissy," and she'd give me a hug. Or so anytime I saw Carol, there was a connection I had. So when people call me Chrissy, it's not a defamation of, oh God, you're still that little boy. It was a term of endearment. So to be around Carol or my father or Betty White or Ken Berry, my dad directed the first two seasons of Mama's Family that was on NBC. And I got to be on the set, and I got to be around Carol and Betty White and Ken Berry, people I adored. I knew what strange, Jan, you think of show business as this very phony business because it's very cutthroat. It seemed strange to me until I got much older and realized that I gained a acceptance in that world because maybe I was Harvey's son. Speech impediment and all. I felt a acceptance, a loving embrace. They didn't treat me less than because of my speech impediment or my language disability. They always treated me as an equal to because I could talk the language of the business. So that helped me get some credibility with them. And I understood their process as artists, and I could articulate that in a way that was meaningful. So I gained acceptance in that context. But like I said, the dearest people I know in my world are actors and performers because they either knew my father or they knew my stepfather, George, who was also an actor, who's in the book. So there was a love and a respect, and but also my conduct behavior is reflective of my father. So I didn't have the luxury of going off and acting like a complete other stupid moron of a child. I had to reflect my father and my mother's standing. So I had to dress nice. I had to, even with the speech impediment, because I'll tell you one thing I learned really quickly. My dad was never going to let my LD use it as a crutch. He was never going to let me use it as a bailout or a cop out for failing. He used to say, "Chris, the only time you fail in life is when you don't try." Meaning, don't use my career as a cop out not to try. Because then you make me the heavy, and I start feeling like I put that pressure on you. I said, that's the pro and con of being his son now. I have to take the pros and the cons with it. Is that I'm in the public eye. I have been since I was 5. whether that's good or bad, John, I don't know. I can't tell you, but because of the golf tournament, because of being a spokesperson for a special ed program, speech impediment and all, becoming the poster child for that cause, wrong or right, that was my reality. So if I complain at times about being his son, it's because there are times that people see him, they don't see me. But sometimes that's to my own detriment, that's my own fault, because I extend myself to people and say, can I help you? Can I use my connections? I just expect people, and you have been so gracious and wonderful yourself, to say thank you. Instead of taking it for granted or assuming you have access to it, it's, hey, Chris, thank you for your help. Thank you for your help. That's all I could ever expect is just a thank you once in a while and not take it for granted because people don't realize I network on his name. I don't network on my name. So I try to be as transparent as I can when I network on behalf of people. Is I'm Harvey Korman's son, and understand my name's not a magic elixir. I can't make people follow what I want them to do for my friend. All I can do is offer them the resources that I can. And if that person has a viable product like your wonderful show, you don't have to over embellish. You don't have to oversell somebody's brand. If that brand is there, I shouldn't have to overwork. I shouldn't have to overuse my name. And so there's a balancing act I have to do with his name and who I am as a person. And sometimes that line is blurred. And sometimes it's frustrating being his son because I assume everybody's transparent in their motivations in contacting me. That's not always the case.
No, it's not.
So, but you have been wonderful, and we've been corresponding for some time. And I found your show because on iHeartRadio, because I have friends who are on iHeartRadio, and I reached out to you because I loved your show, and I listened to some of the shows you were doing, and nobody else was doing what you're doing, and that's the key for me. Is for any artist, a radio person, whatever, is you create a certain niche, and you hook into that. And I thought, God, Jan's doing something that no one else is doing. So that's another reason why I reached out to you. I also thought you were wonderful and you were kind to me, which I really appreciated a lot.
You're welcome,
So,
Chris.
yeah, you. As far as the show business part, that is really, this sounds model, it sounds Pollyanna, but half the joy in my life are the people I've got to engage that I would not have because of who my father was. That's the true blessing for me. It's not fame, wealth, or status, because those things are not sustainable.
Right.
It's the relationships I cultivated in my life because of the Carol Burnett or because of people who are in the business. And they give me the time on Facebook that I have no business talking to. And they give me the time of day. I'm always flattered and blessed. Like Joanna Gleason from Into the Woods, Tony winner. And I introduced myself to her on Facebook. I had no business talking to this woman, only in the sense that she was this big star. She didn't need my help with press. I saw she was doing some performances. I just, hi, I'm Chris Korman, blah, blah, blah. I know you're friends with Bernadette Peters. I'm Chris Korman, I'm Harvey Korman's son. And also don't know that Joanna Gleason's father was Monty Hall. And I knew Joanna because she was on a show called Hello Larry, McLean Stevenson, who was best friends with my father. So I had that connection. So I just said, hey, Joanna, I had so many press opportunities, media ideas, considerations. Can I help you book the shows that you're doing at Feinstein's 54? And she said, oh my Christ, you're so sweet to offer. I don't know that it's right or wrong to do that. I must be dumb. I just think at least it's better to offer it and ask, can I help you? Because it's my way of extending myself to those people that I adore and I admire personally and professionally. So I'm always bewildered and surprised when people contact me anytime you want, Chris. I'm like, really? Wow, okay. And so I'll say, Miss Lisa, it was nice talking to you. So he's like, Chris, what did I tell you? I said, what? Call me Joanne. I'm like, okay, how are you doing? Sorry. It's somehow, some way, Jan, almost mind-blowing that I have access to these people. But more importantly, it's who they are as people matters more to me than It's who they are more important than what they do. Because at the end of the day, you care about the person, you don't care about the brand. If you really can invest in that time with that person. So that's something also I learned about just being transparent and being myself and being genuine with people. And I hope they reciprocate. And if they don't, I can't help that. I can just control my behavior and my conduct. Um, I also have a very strange philosophy. I tell people, and it sounds weird to say this, Jan, but I tell people, what good is the son of a cross-dressing Jew from Chicago if he can't help his friends?
I love that because that your father referred to himself that way
Yeah.
very, very often. It sounds like Chris. What I mean, you've got Carol Burnett has written the foreword in the book, and so has
Yes.
Marshall. And you were blessed, with your childhood to have access. You're right. You've met so many famous people throughout the years, and yet it was interesting that your dad um felt shy around meeting other famous people.
Oh God.
He did not feel that he should go talk the Burt Lancaster story. Let's talk about that. He was like
Oh my
so
God.
shy when he was around famous people. And Michelle Pfeiffer, those are two wonderful stories. Share the story about Burt Lancaster and then, follow up with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Well, the Burt
It says a
Lancaster.
lot about who your father was, really does, that he didn't like to be recognized in public. So let's talk about both of those stories.
He was almost he was apologetic to the point of nauseum because it was like here's somebody who's some here was somebody who's in somebody's home for 10 years in television. And TV is such a more of an immediate medium. It's so more personal than a movie actor. So I'm facing the buffet area. Bert's walking towards us. Now I'm trying to talk with food in my mouth, which is also undignifying. So I
Right.
have two things going against me. So I'm now talking between my teeth. Dad, Burt Lancaster is coming your way. And like a bad Abbott Costello routine, he said, what? Burt Lancaster is walking our way. Before I could get it out, Burt tilts his head over. He says, Harvey? My dad tilts his head, and my dad still has food in his mouth, so I know this is not boding well for either one of us. He looks up, Burt? Harvey? I'm like, oh God, maybe my dad finished chewing his food before he talks anymore. And I'm chewing my food quickly. He said, oh, hi, Burt, this is my son, Chris. Now I'm dumbfounded because I can't believe it's Burt Lancaster. I said, hi, Mr. Lancaster, it's underneath you. Please call me Burt. Okay, now I'm gone. And now my father's gone too because he can't believe Burt Lancaster's talking to him. So my dad moves into the booth. Now we're all sitting there staring at each other, eating and not talking. Like who's going to say the first word without food coming out of their mouth? That's the challenge. For 20 seconds, they're looking at each other. I'm looking at them both and I said, well, someone say something. The silence is killing me here.
Right.
Bert says, Harvey, my wife and I have been watching you for years. My dad was done after that. He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't talk. He was like Daffy Duck. He couldn't grasp that Burt Lancaster knew who he was. He's like, you're a movie star. I'm this guy on this variety show. I'm this schmo from Chicago on this variety show, and you're Burt Lancaster. I have no business talking to you. This whole pecking order of this business is amazing, Jan. It's movies, it's theater, movies, television, and then everybody else. And that's the pecking order of legitimate acting. To actors, it is. So I couldn't grasp his brain to just be, he just couldn't talk. It was like, and Bert saying, he's been praising my father. And I was sitting there going, you know who my father is? He said, Chris, we've been watching your father for years. My dad gets done saying, but you're Burt Lancaster. You have more important things to do than watch a schmo like me. And Bert said, Harvey, I could never do what you do. And that's the fallacy in this business, Jan. We assume every actor can do what everybody else can do. Most actors don't do sketch comedy for that reason. A, it's live, in a way, it's live to tape. You do use cue cards on the Burnett show. we assume every actor can do every other discipline of acting. That's not true. But my dad was classically trained at Goodman Theater. He studied with Uta Hagen. He studied at HB Studios. And I used to say to my dad, I said, you have so much classical training, you have an existential crisis just saying good morning. And he said, that's true. But he was trained at Goodman to approach all roles, farce or satire, as an actor, not as a comedian doing acting. He was always played the truth, whether it's satire or farce. So he talked about that things like me. So when now the Michelle Pfeiffer thing is a little vague, but I can say this: we're out sitting out on a patio in Santa Monica at this coffee place. He saw Michelle going in to the coffee place. I'm sitting there on the patio with one of my dad's friends. He says to me, go into the coffee place and say really loudly, 4-time Emmy winner and Golden Globe winner wants a latte and a maple spoon. I said, how about you do it instead of pimping me out? I said, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll come back. If you're still here, great. If you're not, I'm walking into the table because I don't want to be any part of this. So I come back and he's standing in the line now. I know he knows he sees Michelle standing there. And I'm sitting there going, this is not going to bode well for anybody in this room. He says really loudly to the person behind the counter, Harvey Korman would like Emmy winner, Harvey Korman, Golden Globe winner would like a latte. I'm like, oh my God, Jesus.
For someone who didn't like,
Michelle, I didn't see you standing there.
for someone who doesn't like to draw attention to himself, he certainly did in that instance. Anything for Michelle Pfeiffer, right?
Oh, okay. Now, mind you, her husband, David E. Kelly, had been producing Boston Legal. Right. He thought that pimping me out to Michelle Pfeiffer would get him on Boston Legal. I said, you try kissing your own, you know what? I'm not doing it for you. You're not pimping me out. You pimp out the kid with the speech impediment. What does that say about you? I said, where's your agent in all this? Now, if I get you on Boston Legal, I want 10% of your take. If you're going to put me out here, I want to cut.
Right.
I said, okay, I get it.
Great story. Great story. Both of them are wonderful stories. Oh, Chris, what for you, and your book has a lot in it, and I just want to tell everyone, if you're looking for a Christmas gift for your loved ones, anyone who love Harvey Korman, or if you're just becoming familiar with him, if you were too young to ever have watched him, this is a wonderful book with great memories about your dad. But what do you think the greatest, and you've kind of alluded, but what do you think the greatest lesson your father ever gave you? What for you is his legacy for you personally?
Well, if I could frame it, in 1982, he went on the Tonight Show and he told Johnny asked him what you were doing. He said, well, I'm going to do a film and I'm going to Chicago to speak at the National Organization of Special Ed Teachers. I'm in the green room. I didn't know this. I didn't know where my dad was half the time anyway. So we're in the green room and he says to Johnny, I'm going to Chicago to speak at the conference of the National Organization of Special Ed Teachers, which eventually morphed into the Learning Disabilities Association of America, which is based in Pittsburgh. I didn't know this. So what's really weird, Jen, is I'm in Baltimore, which is where my wife and my son is from. I spoke at the national conference in 2017 in Baltimore. So I'm standing there, and the national director of the LDA walks up to me and says, it's such an honor to have you here. I said, oh, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this. No, she said, you don't understand. Your father put us on the map.
Oh, wonderful.
What do you mean? I said, he was our national spokesperson for the first 5 years. I didn't know that. He never talked about it. My dad just did what he thought was right by his child. He didn't say, here, look at me. He didn't ask for press on it. I said, so you're saying my father was his spokesperson, and now I'm following him.
Right.
And I swear to God, Jen, I don't know what possessed me to say this in front of 300 people at registration. I blurted out, you know, it's just my luck. I have to follow a cross-dresser. Everybody just stopped. They didn't know if I was joking. Finally, someone said, I don't get it. And the director said, Mother Marcus, the Carol Burnett show. Oh, okay. Then everybody chimed in with the laughter. But she said, no, your father really did. And he humanized the idea that a parent was a parent first. He was a parent first and a celebrity second. And they gave us such credibility. And that, with the golf tournament, and for you to come and speak and
Chris,
share.
I would love to talk to you some more, but we have run out of time. So where
Okay.
can people find, oh my God, it's Harvey Korman's
But,
son.
well,
Where
first of
can
all, thank you
people
for
find
having
it?
me on your show.
Oh,
Two,
you're welcome.
he was the greatest father in the world. And even if he wasn't my father, I still would have loved him. And he still would have been my favorite performer.
Great. I agree.
But Amazon.com.
Amazon.com. Okay.
Now I'll have to pronounce this because I screwed up every time. Bear Manor, Bear Manor, Manor Press.
Okay.
You
Great.
get it hardcover or softcover.
Everybody seek out, find on Amazon.com. Oh my God, it's Harvey Korman's son. Chris, thank you so much. What an
You're
honor to
welcome,
have you
Mary.
on my show.
It's my honor to be on.
It's also an honor to call you my friend. So
I'm
thank
to
you
call
so
you my dear
much.
friend too, Jan.
Thank you.
You're
Happy
welcome.
holidays.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.